We are very excited to talk with Adrian today about mushrooms, all kinds of mushrooms, but especially our 4 new strains at Mama Dose. So, Adrian, let's start by introducing yourself. Tell us who you are, how you got into this, and how you got here with us today.
After college, I was actually in the app development sort of wave early on in San Francisco, and I was doing my rounds and trying to become this entrepreneur. Um, but somehow I got introduced to cannabis and the whole industry and science of it. And during that time, we were helping a lot of medical patients with the group I was working with, and that's what I really fell in love with. So the specialty I really got into was cultivation, and I didn't know anything at the time, but I got introduced and taught by some really good mentors that were already previously growing for about 30 years. So I picked up a lot of that farming skill from them, and then overlapping that was also mushroom growing, both functional and psychedelic. But for about a 12-year run, I was in the cultivation part. And then I moved back down here about to LA maybe about 8 years ago. And I was looking for something different. And I sort of segued and pivoted into mushroom cultivation because I was familiar with it. And then there was a trend going on with psychedelics at that time. And I just decided to jump into it and relearn it again and sharpen up my skills. So I started just growing cordyceps and lion's mane really because they were sort of the most I guess the easiest to get into. And from there, I started doing both. And so for the past really 5 years, I've been honing in my skills in the mushroom cultivation side of just growing it all, trying to learn the fungi and really get good at it. Because unlike plants, it's a whole different. I mean, people say growing is growing, but it's really not. There's a lot of different nuances and the way you take care of them. And the really overlapping factor is environmental controls when you're going indoor. But everything else, as far as like, um, everything from sterilization, like plants don't require sterilization in a clean environment. So a lot of it's a lot more scientific, I could say, than it
For
is
sure.
growing plants. So that's where I'm at right now. We're trying to do morels right now, and some of the things that people say you can't grow indoors. Um, Still with not a lot of success, but we'll figure it out. People in Amsterdam have figured out how to grow indoor, and they're successfully harvesting morels, but that's a bit of a trade secret. So we're figuring that out. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at right now.
Well,
Mycology is very, very particular,
very
right? When we first started talking about microdosing before Mama Dose was even born, we thought about growing psilocybin. And once we started looking into it, I mean, it's a science. It
yeah.
takes a very particular and special person, especially to grow ethical medicine and really care for it and from beginning to end.
And we're at a very, very great, interesting time right now where, a lot of people are educated about psilocybin. A lot of people are getting informed, and a lot of people, we're right here. A lot of people want to dive into this medicine. So a lot of people know about strains like Golden Teacher and Albino Penis Envy, stuff of that. So, we're going to dive into 4 strains today, maybe some more, but why don't we dive into strains, the effects, the benefits, how you grow them, and we'll just talk.
And let's start with psilocybin, and
Let's-
then we can talk about the functionals,
Yeah.
because as you obviously know, because you grow them, both are so important.
Yeah.
But let's talk psilocybin.
Let's talk golden teacher. You know, it's a
Sure.
very, very famous, it's a very popular mushroom. Everybody wants a golden teacher.
Or a penis envy.
Yeah, let's talk with golden teacher first.
Yeah, so these strains are all fall into the category cubensis, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You
Mhm.
know, there's other strains like pans and cyans that are a little bit more difficult to grow and a whole different technically category. But yeah, the golden teacher that's been around since probably the 70s were just the first ones that were picked from the wild and domesticated, you know? And all the strains that followed after um all all have an influence from golden teacher, meaning they're either like an isolation or they're a hybrid of the golden teacher. And it's sort of just it's almost follows the same path of cannabis, where people went out into the fields of Afghanistan, found some landrace seeds and brought it back and domesticated it, and then few generations later, other daring people went out and got some from Kashmir in India and different strains from Mexico, and they started brought it back home and then started crossbreeding. So you know over I mean now we're in maybe 60 years of underground sort of, you could say, testing. We're left with things like Golden Teacher, Bluey, Vuitton, Penis Envy, that are fragments of what the original one was. And obviously, just like cannabis, we're trying to isolate and trying to narrow down characteristics that people enjoy, whether that's for healing, for recreational, for medicinal. They all serve its purpose. But now we're just discovering that it's not even just a psilocybin anymore. There's other alkaloids that contribute to the synergistic effect of. I like to focus on the healing part, but it's the same for recreational. The visual aspect, you know, that people get from golden teachers or these stipy type of strains that are skinny. The visuals are a lot more potent, but also a lot more healing. And again, it depends how you're utilizing these tools. So more of a visual indicator than anything. And what they found was, they did like them and they were potent, but now these new brands are realizing, oh, it's the golden teachers, the blue meanies, the Jedi mind, that are actually much more, I guess you could say, whole in its effect. That's because these are like the strains that are closer to the original ones, where um why humans even were taking this medicine in the first place,
Right.
So, we're just getting into the isolation part, and trying to understand what these alkaloids and the combination of alkaloids really mean. Like, we were working with these guys in San Diego, um, Ghost Labs, and they were what they told me was that they were testing on their chromatography machine, and there was at least 20 other compounds that were popping up on the screen that they couldn't identify because they just don't have the isolations to measure against. So they're seeing that there's a lot of other compounds that's being overlooked or not even being studied, that um, they can't identify. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and when you limit to just like penis envy and golden teachers, like there's hundreds of strains out there that have, multitude of compounds that, you know, w- will cater to certain types of ailments.
Hmm.
But you're saying that the golden teachers, the GT, is basically the OG of them all.
It is, and that's because Terrence McKenna talks a lot about this and his ventures in going to the forest and trying to collect species. That's sort of like the one that was just spread all around, I guess, the countries. and
The world.
and from there was what they call is genetic mutations of that particular strain. And again, no one's actually has done um, check the DNA and and did a whole history of it, but they can, they do it with humans all the time, and that's why you can find out who your ancestors are. But
Hmm.
they just haven't put in the money to find out yet,
Well, the DNA in mushrooms and fungi and in human is very similar. Am I correct? The
We're
genetics,
you're
DNA
definitely
makeup.
we're definitely closer to fungi than we are to plants.
Of course,
Yeah.
that is us. I mean, it's the composition of all the decomposing of all the earth forever and ever and ever. So we have to be in there somewhere, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why there's a lot of mental and health benefits in this because, in health and healing, when they're talking about eating foods, they say you want to eat the foods that you're trying that associated with the organs that you're trying to heal, like walnuts, walnuts with your brain, beans for your kidneys, stuff that looks just like your organs, And if you look at mycelium, I mean, it's brain matter, neurons and on top of neurons, and when if you're ever down here, I'd love to take you around and show you the lab and the grow. But the mycelium, I'm sure you're familiar. They grow just like neurons, They're always reaching out, connecting, and receding and growing, and it's alive, and
It's just connection, some to the earth too. It's just connecting. They're
The
used
entire world.
connecting to each
it's the
other
largest. It's the largest organism. Yes, you're right.
for sure.
The only organism, if I'm right, that connects every single planet in this world.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So there that is. I think that is a real magic, and we're not. And then here we're not even just really talking about the the psilocybin aspect. This is all medicinal. They all function in the same matter. Under all of these, like the chaga, and the shiitakes that grow with the trees. Like
mhm,
there's definitely something synergistic and magical about that
absolutely.
we don't understand yet, or we're just
Well,
getting
we
to
have
understand.
that we don't understand because we haven't given any effort to it because everybody just wants to take a pill. So let's talk about this though. Let's dive into a little bit of these strains. Like a golden teacher, let's compare. Let's just go down a comparable level. A golden teacher, would you say, is kind of a beginner kind of mushroom? Would you say?
Well, so we've had a lot of these conversations of like what's a good one to take
Sure.
or whatever reason. Again, we categorize it in the three pillars, which is the medicinal, the recreational,
Let's
eh,
all focus on
Healing.
medicinal.
Wait a minute. What's the third one?
um, medicinal, recreational, and oh wow, wow, I'm blank. Sorry.
Okay,
Medicinal.
I think you said healing.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Mental. We like to play with the mental. So, um, the people have tried all different types of strains, and I think what the most sort of obvious feedback is that it's about the dosage, and then obviously the intention behind it. So here in Southern California, you either get the people that want to party and want to take a few couple grams, whether that's maybe partying or they want to go on a hiking trip and want to defrag their mind and just reset. But then like the healing people that are, dealing with PTSD, trauma, anxiety, they're taking microdoses. And what we found in microdosing level, it doesn't really matter what strain it is because it's such a low impact mentally that you don't get the visuals or you don't get these other what I was calling the Holer effects because there's just not enough compounds at one time going into your body to induce those types of feelings of euphoria or
Sure.
what have you. So I think it comes down to dosage. And eventually when people start isolating these alkaloids with the the norcysteine and the basteines, and recombining them, there will be beneficial combinations that are specifically for PTSD or specifically for anxiety or for creativity. But right now, as far as whole fruit, when you're doing microdosing and you're doing it daily, or if you're doing the Stamets protocol every 2 days, it does not vary. At least that's what we found through all the brands that we work with and people that we've talked to. So yeah, it's really the dosing.
But there could be a difference between some, right? Like if I'm going to take a half a gram of a golden teacher or a penis envy, that's going to be a very different experience than if I take a half a gram of enigma or tidal wave.
Yeah, so I should fix that with the dosage based on the actual silo content.
Yeah, silo content.
Because so for example, we've dealt with brands that will look at like a Mechilogorilla that test in at 1.8%, and then we'll have a golden teacher that tests in at 0.7%.
Can we explain that a little bit to the audience? Can we explain that
What that means?
what that means?
Yeah, so this is just strictly psilocybin content, not well they do a combination of psilocybin and psilocin content, which is the psilocin is the converted psilocybin. But when you're looking at these test results, it's mainly psilocybin content, and so on average you could say strains across the board testing around 1% on average. And then on the higher up with your enigmas and your rare exotic strains like Toke, they're in like the 3 to 4% range.
3%
Wow.
percent of what though? Can you tell me?
Psilocybin content.
The 3% is in there.
In the gram.
Yes.
Per gram. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get the audience to understand this more because they're really confused by it. Sometimes I get a little thrown off by it. So I just like to look at psilocybin content instead of psilocin content because psilocin is just a 4-MCO.
And could you think of it the same way as people do with cannabis, right? Like it could have a 32% strain would be a very strong cannabis, whereas a 13% wouldn't be as strong.
Exactly. And so, people bring that up all the time. So, and I've asked them, have you ever smoked or tried any THC that was 99% isolate? And, most people haven't, because to even get that is sort of, a luxury. But if you have and you've tried it, you don't really get any effect. You only really get the effect if you add in the terpenes. Now you have, let's just say 80% THC and add in even a small dab of terpenes, that's going to be the most extreme high you've ever had, but it requires the whole spectrum, and I think that's why when you said yes, psilocin and 4-ACO or these other MNT are all coming to light because they're sort of legal, but it doesn't give you the full effect, and people are starting to realize that now too. So I don't know how big synthetics are in your part of the area, but in smoke shops all around California and I guess across the nation, that all these mushroom bars are all 4-ACO, and it's unfortunate.
Terrible.
Doesn't psilocybin break down to that anyways?
So yes, so you're exactly right. That's why it doesn't test. That's why they call it a non-detect, because it doesn't test for psilocybin, but it tests for psilocin because it is chemically the same structure.
Mm-hmm.
But on the federal level, it gives them a pass, and that's why they're doing it. But
we don't care.
Or they're using amaretto.
We don't care.
Right?
Yeah. So, but again, those are people that have never really even had a chance to get access to real mushrooms, because if they did, they'd never go down this route,
Ever.
So, but again, it's introducing people into it, and it's only till time, to me, they ask like, oh, what's your take on 4-ACO? And right, I don't deal with anything synthetic in anything really, whether that's cannabis or foods,
Yeah.
or fungi. And so, but I think it does have its place where it at least people get a little sip into this new
Mhm.
reality. At least it could open up their reality. I probably should say, and then hopefully later on they find the real medicine. So I know this was a little segue out from your original
Yeah,
question,
that's
but
okay. This is a good
No, this is
conversation.
just good.
Let's talk a little bit about more specific strains that Mama Dose is now introducing, which is Mechilogorilla,
Mhm.
the
Albino penis envy
right, the albino penis envy, golden teacher, of
and Louis
course,
Vuitton.
and Bluey Vuitton. Let's talk about
Perfect.
Bluey Vuitton.
Yeah, so actually, I shouldn't dismiss that they don't have any effect because most likely, these customers, they'll try, depending on their experience, they'll microdose first, right? And then they get comfortable, they start understanding, and then when you start taking a few capsules at one time, then you
Mhm.
start entering the real ride, and that's when it really matters. And so that's why I'm saying it's not to dismiss that these strains don't matter in the microdose, but when you're taking a couple or a few of them, they do. And so with going into this like Louis Vuitton, people really like Louis Vuitton right now because it's a high potent psilocybin content, but it actually has a lot of other alkaloids in it. And I'd say if you look at test results, which I could share with you after this, they test out um in higher combinations than like Maquilla's or golden teachers. So like for example, like Maquilla's will just sort of you'll usually see Maquilla's higher in a norbastein and Louis Vuitton they'll have all four alkaloids test sort of at least like point I think if I remember like between 0.3 to like 0.6% in some kind of
Mhm.
combination. So what that really means, I can only tell you in feedback, which is it's just a great experience. Um,
Mhm.
whether that may be visual or maybe healing, or maybe just you're out and you're having just a good time. Believe Vuitton just always comes back with a great just a great
Positive feedback.
always for some
Yeah.
reason. And then when you go into like, so let's talk about like these other strains like Machilla. When you're taking in the higher doses, you'll find that it's very meditative, it's very introspective, so not a lot of visuals. And again, that's why it's not to dismiss that the visuals is not the only thing that you're looking for, because people just
Hmm.
actually sometimes just want to be able to sit with themselves and
Yeah.
peel back
Sure.
the layers, and really figure out what's going on or what they're trying to get to by being able to sit still even, that's so hard these days to even just be quiet, especially with all the noise around us. So the feedback that we've gotten is, yeah, Makilla is very introspective. That's definitely not something you want to party with because you'll just be sitting in a corner thinking about what I'm doing with my life, so that type
We
of
don't promote partying
Yeah.
on our podcast anyway. We believe that these medicines are used for healing, and not that healing cannot be joyful
Yeah.
sometimes,
For sure.
because you don't have to sit and shit to heal. I mean, sometimes it could be music and fun, and but we are definitely on the side of healing
I like
here.
that. So we got the
Yeah,
Louis Vuitton.
the
We got that
Makilla
is really everybody loves that. We got the Makilla, like let's
go
go deep a
inward.
little bit, go
yes,
inward.
to go
Then
deep.
we got the albino penis envy.
So the albino penis envy, you could say that actually gives a lot. Again, this is all just feedback. There's no real. We don't know what the isolations mean, but that gets you a little giggly. Up, I would
Hmm.
associate it with a sativa type of experience, uplifting,
Mhm.
sort of euphoric, energetic. Those are the type of feedbacks that we get with that. And
Okay.
it's just again, these are just common things. Maybe you know, I again the this is
Common is good though,
Listen, everybody's different and
yeah,
everybody pull up to the medicine at a different place in their lives, at different point in their lives. It's not a
exactly.
one size fits all, so we get it. It's
Yeah.
going to affect everybody differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it gives these people a baseline.
Right.
Then let's
Exactly.
go on and talk about the golden teacher. That is
So
The OG.
yeah,
you
so
know,
and that's what I'm saying. So so originally that's what I was going into is like people are used to these new apes, people are used to these new even Blue Vuitton's definitely a newer commercial strain that's been stabilized and the reason for that is because um they were chasing after percentage, like which one tests high and they keep isolating for what's testing high. And then with that, you sort of start stripping away um
the
the
value.
the value, the other alkaloids, in the whatever combination originally was. Um
Yeah.
because they're not looking for it, they're not testing for it. They're not isolating for those particular alkaloids, just really psilocybin. So we've given someone a gram of Mechilogorilla even, and then it's whatever good feedback, and then give them a gram of golden teachers, and they're like, it, it's almost unexplainable to them what that experience was. And so what's contributing to that? Again, I think it's these other alkaloids found still in golden teachers, even though it's not high in psilocybin content. That's the thing. They always test in between zero point 0.5 to 0.8% usually on average, at least with our sort of network of growers and what we've tested. They're always in that range. And so, people are turned off like, oh, it's a weak strain. And it's like, it's not a weak strain. Try it. You're just like cannabis, people are chasing after these numbers.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I always challenge people like, hey, you've tried all these other strains, try golden teacher. Tell me your experience after that, and tell me
Well,
tell
they
me the
call it a
healing.
don't you think they would call it a golden? Don't you think McKenna and them named it for the reason? I mean,
Exactly.
it's a golden teacher. It's
Yeah.
it's teaching you to
You.
be golden. It's teaching. Always, you're never gonna know if you know coming off a psychedelic journey what you just knew. You didn't go through a psychedelic journey.
Exactly.
You're never gonna know until it's like weeks later. You're not going to know. Oh, I saw my grandmother and I saw I could see that in my dreams. You're not going to know. I love the alkaloids. I love the alkaloid parts about all these medicines because I think that's the biggest thing we are missing. A medicine like Aboga has 7 alkaloids. 7. It has all your 7 powerful alkaloids. That's why that medicine works so well. 90%, 87% cure rate on 1 flood dose. 2 flood doses, 90. You're almost in the 98% cure rate for opioid addiction. You think that's the medicine? That is the alkaloids, my friend.
Right.
Alkaloid, and we're just discovering alkaloids. We're just discovering like what is an alkaloid? Is that what you put in
Right.
your drink at night? We don't even know what this is, but it's so important to what we do.
But we know it
So
exists, and we know it's in these medicines, and we're seeing the results. So it through deduction, it's very important, you know.
very. I
And
think when people talk about alkaloids, I know they're talking correct because there's something important. We're missing something here. Like alkaloids, they keep coming up in ayahuasca. They keep coming up in mushrooms. They keep coming up in aboga, like the biggest.
Wachuma.
What are we talking
Oh,
about here? What are we talking about? We're talking about something that's healing us, but we're throwing it out the door because nobody fucking understands it.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. So, and I think we're at that cusp of that. And obviously, as this gets more recreational and as it becomes more legalized, more labs and traditional researchers will be, you know, looking
Think if
into
we
it.
could Think if we could take a pill, Adrian. That's all everybody wants to. I like to go on journeys. So, but most of the majority wants to take a pill. Think if we could really cure our mental health through the understanding of these alkaloids. You could take a pill, maybe, because our alkaloids, and I don't even understand them, I just hear about them so much. So there has to be something with alkaloids and these medicines that they're keeping us from. That's maybe why they made it Schedule Ones. That's why they maybe made all these things illegal, because the government doesn't even understand what alkaloids do.
I'm
Well,
sure they do.
and to some degree, but it sounds like you guys have been on this journey for a while, and you're probably familiar with uh, energetic healing,
Sure, for
and
sure.
resonance and frequencies.
Hmm.
And if you really step back as furthest as you can from this sort of universe, everything is vibrating, even these chemical compounds. And this might just a little segue out. So these compounds are vibrating at a certain frequency, and
Hmm.
now when you take these, I think these little soldiers or whatever compounds are all are vibrating at a certain frequency, and then when you take them, they are going into your body, into your brain, and sort of recalibrating outer frequency parts of yourself.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that to me is like a whole nother field in even like holistic healing, where you're taking these PMF mats and red light therapies. These are like outer body sort of frequencies like that's coming in, but when you take these internally orally, and it's going directly through your blood brain barrier into your organs, they are attacking not attacking, they're healing directly with its own frequency of its own healing. So when we're talking about these alkaloids, yeah, they're compounds and they're chemical, and they could see it and they could see the structure. But I think that there's a missing, they say, how do we bridge the gap between Eastern and Western medicine? And I think that's in this if you understand frequency and resonance, that's what these medicines are. And so that's my own personal little take on what is actually really happening, because you're starting to see these studies like, oh, cancer is actually a lot of like emotional stored trauma,
Of
like
course.
things of that matter, even obviously all these types of traumas are all stored frequencies, and
Yeah.
the only way
The mind causes disease in the body. It
exactly.
just does.
So, and now science is only admitting that now, right? Like the power of the mind. So that's why we have the placebo effect, right? Like, why is every pharmaceutical drug put up against a placebo effect? But they dismiss the placebo effect as it's just the mind, without looking at the fact that, oh, you're testing every single pharma drug against this. So they're dismissing the power of the mind that we could heal
Yeah.
ourselves, we could
They
fix
missed the
ourselves,
whole point.
They missed
They missed
everything.
the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk functionals for a minute, because I had no idea the power of functional mushrooms. Of course, the Chinese herbalists and all the things for thousands of years, and then one day about 5 years ago, I watched Fantastic Fungi,
Okay.
and it absolutely changed my life. And I started taking lion's mane from that day forward. And every single person I talk to anywhere in my life, I encourage them to take the functional mushrooms as well. It's mind blowing the benefits. Let's talk lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, and reishi in particular. Let's start with lion's mane.
Yeah, so lion's mane. So we're going back to this idea of eat the foods that closely look like the area you're trying to heal, and obviously, lion's mane in mass literally
It's your
looks
brain.
looks like your brain. And
Hmm.
so and there's people like some people may or may not like Paul Stamets, but he's doing his part, trying to get get this get his business out, and successful, while also uh, making breakthroughs and understanding what these compounds do. And so, he's found, mixing lion's mane and a little, just even a little bit of silo content can almost reverse Alzheimer's, or at least, someone taking lion's mane. I think the study was someone taking lion's mane, and then taking psilocybin with it can 10x the deteriorating factor of Alzheimer's once they stop taking it. So there's some, lion's mane alone actually, has a lot of the compounds already that help you with the NFGs, the
I think
neural
about
growth
what you
factor.
that
I know.
that is phenomenal,
And,
right?
you
That
know,
is phenomenal. And the majority of the world has no idea.
but it's what on top of that, Adrian, is it's fact. I mean, it's
Yes.
scientific.
Scientific
Yes.
That is magic. That's the magic pill to like, bang, open your mind up again. And
to
what are we doing? I
regenerate
mean,
your
you're
brain.
talking 200 milligrams of psilocybin, which is, you know, on the upper echelons of higher doses, but you know, it's not
For
going to affect
microdose.
most
Yes.
people. 500 milligrams of lion's mane. There's your game changer. There's your regeneration. There's everything you could think about. There's your 2A receptors just opening wide open and saying, "Hey, motherfucker, I'm here." You know?
Yeah. So you know, I think that's real magic. Again, this is combining these both sides of the medicines, right? And when we say sides, it's all technically in the fungi world, it's all one, right?
Yeah.
It's all one. But for us and legal factors, we identify as two categories, you know.
Yeah.
But they both need each other, or we need both of them to really help us and realign ourselves and heal ourselves, you know.
But if we go back, Adrian, is also there's alkaloids in the functionals? Because there's
Oh,
alkaloid
yeah,
functionals, right?
there's terpenoids just like yeah, and alkaloids just like silo. Yes, they are all being produced in there, and you know, polyphenols that are in there, you know, I mean not polyphenol, just regular phenols and flavonoids that are also, you know, just found in chocolate, you know. And the thing about fungi is I think, you know, again, it goes back to this alkaloids. They can construct what sorry, let me take a step back. Terps from plants and CBD and THC, you know, the plants can produce that in its own synthetic its own synthetic process, right? Or synthesis process in the plants, and we use it as medicine, right? And we see the benefits of cannabinoids in our bodies for whatever type of ailments. We know that these are facts now, right? People used to just get high, suppose, but now
Yep.
it's with this, it's really medicinal in certain doses.
Sure.
So now, you know, we tie it back to this idea that we're closer to the fungi than we are to the plants, right? So the mycelium that can construct these fruiting bodies, the different types of fruiting bodies, whether it's cubensis, cordyceps, or lion's mane, it it can construct specifically what our body needs. You know, it's like it's a factory for benefits for us. You know, and so if cannabis can do that for cancer and other ailments, and we're further away from that than we are fungi, what can fungi do for us? You know, and that's why I'm saying, like, it has a lot more compounds, healing compounds, than any plant.
What I do for you.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
love that. What can the fungi do for you?
Yeah, I
because that's
love
what
that.
it's doing. It's there for us. You know, we're part of it essentially, right? And so it's a, you know, and maybe here's an analogy. You know, when women are pregnant, you know, and I recently learned this, when women are pregnant and some, you know, they get injured or something, the baby will send stem cells because it needs the host, the mother, to survive, right? And so just like we need fungi, fungi needs us. We're symbiotic, you know. And with that metaphor, I think if we provide conditions for it to thrive and we don't destroy the earth, it will also give us the medicines that we need to heal, you know.
Always.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about cordyceps next.
Yeah, so the cordyceps, I mean, you know, that's the equivalent of what psilocybin is in the cubensis. Cordyceps is what people are chasing after, but just like all the other mushrooms, there's phenols, there's flavonoids in there, there's, you know, terpenoids in there. And if you've ever taken cordyceps like as chips, they taste really good. Like they're, you know, dehydrated. I will send you some.
Okay.
Yeah. So they taste just almost like a, not like a potato chip, but like it's almost hard to describe. You're just gonna have to taste it yourself, but it has a good flavor profile, you know, and it doesn't taste disgusting. It, like you would imagine that other savory mushrooms taste like.
Sure.
But again,
That's interesting.
so with that, again, there's something about that, like it if it wants to be eaten, I always say like it has to at least taste decent, or at least we know that's how our ancestors figure stuff out. Like if it tastes bad, it probably is not for eating, or if you don't receive it well, it's not for eating. So going back to the cordyceps, I do a run club now, and I actually got a lot of people onto this cordyceps, and now the running is better. And the reason why I was doing that is because I came across another study uh, about some Olympians, Chinese Olympians, in I think this was maybe in the 70s. Chinese Olympians were winning and dominating. I think they were women. They were dominating in these track and field races, and the rest of the world thought they were doping. Come to find out, they were just taking cordyceps because now 30 actually 50 years 60 years later, they science finds out that cordyceps allows your blood to carry more oxygen into your bloodstream, therefore having better endurance, better stamina, better blood flow, better just oxygen to your brain or your overall function. So that's why a lot of people get a lot of this instant boost when you take cordyceps, because it's just allowing your blood to carry. So it's like when people do breathing exercises, you load up on oxygen, and it gives you a little stimulus.
Sure.
But that's what cordyceps does, is allows the blood to carry more blood or more oxygen.
Wow.
And
I did not know that.
so that's science now. Before, it used to just be traditional Chinese medicine, but these new labs, these and actually the where it's coming from is actually these fitness pre-workout companies doing these studies, because they're trying to gain an edge on their pre-workout mixes, really. So it's coming from there, a whole different field. This is just performance category, but yeah.
Isn't that great?
But
Yeah,
yeah, so
that
that's
is very interesting.
so that's I
So
think
that's
that's the magic
medical
of cordyceps.
Okay, how about reishi? Because we have a guy who helps us make the capsules for these, because we do offer these at Mama Dose. He has been putting the reishi directly on some skin ailments, like some eczema and things like that, and it's helping him.
Yeah, well, you have your antibacterial and oddly enough, your antifungal um properties in reishi. It's very rich in
Mhm.
antioxidants, and similar to why people put fruit peels onto your skin, because it's just rich. It's rich in minerals. It's rich in, again, it's these flavonoids and these not poly these phenols that are essentially antioxidants that allow the skin to absorb the amino acids. There are proteins in these. There's carbohydrates in these, and your skin needs all of these things. And so, but when you're talking about skin issues, it could be anything from associated from eczema, which is like, now they're sort of connecting with fungal overgrowth, candida, and it
Hmm.
and so it helps on the exterior, but obviously the real problem is interior, which is in the gut biome and gut leakage and overgrowth of particular bacterias and pathogens, and on top of that, your lymphatic system. So, but as a topical, yeah, it has it in just its basic sort of sell point is antibacterial, antifungal. So it's healing through that mode. But reishi is
Man,
in
Yeah.
Chinese traditional medicine is the there's a reason why it's the most popular compound, and it's used in every mode of ailment. It's always the main ingredient.
so
You know.
reishi's more common than lion's mane, huh?
Yes, and in traditional Chinese medicine.
Interesting,
Wow, that
interesting.
is interesting.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
didn't know that
Chaga.
either. And now the last one, chaga.
So chaga, so that We were talking about being able to grow that indoors. For some reason, you know, and again, I'm sure someone will figure it out. Just like someone figured out how to grow truffles indoors. Um, chaga only grows in the wild.
Hmm.
It needs to have perfect conditions. It needs to have the right type of tree, and and I there's just something maybe about the outdoors where it needs this conditions because it has per gram the highest amount of antioxidants in any compared to any other anything in this world.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, per gram it has the highest amount of antioxidants. How it does it, what's the mode, and how it extracts that from trees outside of Serbia, I'm not exactly sure.
Not insanity, but because that's crazy. So they only grow out of trees, so they really have to be grown from the wild. So when we're getting this chaga, most of it's probably bullshit. It's not real chaga.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
You're
Well,
ordering from Amazon.
Amazon.
yeah. So okay. So when you're getting into these, this is sort of uncharted territory. Okay. So
That's okay.
if you look at the Chinese, okay. So chocolate, a lot of it comes from uh Europe, really, and then there's in North America, a lot of it. There's in the Pacific Northwest, and also on the other side, where Maine, uh, the other corner. But
Okay.
but a lot of this is a business, right? And so a lot of people
Yeah.
are looking for profits. And if you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know your farmer, or you don't know who's harvesting it or foraging it for you could assume it's cut. And if you look on Amazon, whether it's cut or it's uh, whatever whatever grade it is, you could assume that it's not the highest quality because China is the number one buyer in the world for medicines, and they also pay for it
Hmm.
as in a premium way because it's been in their culture for so long, and they it's like us. If we actually knew the benefits and actually treated it as such, we'd be paying a premium too. But our market is not there yet. But the Chinese have paid the higher price for it because they just want the best, the highest quality because it is their medicine and they know it's medicine. So even the extract that you do get from Amazon or from unknown growers, a lot of it is tainted. Not maybe maybe it's not cut, but it was extracted from a B or C grade quality material. So what that
Got it.
means is like that doesn't mean you're not getting those compounds. What that means is you're not getting the full amount of compounds that the Chinese would claim would be full medicinal healing or benefits. So going back to chaga, if you don't know where it's coming from and you don't know who forged it, it's easy to cut it with other polysaccharides or any fruiting body material. That's very you can't differentiate, especially when it's been pulverized.
Hmm.
And it's really hard to test for chaga because there's so much compounds in it that you can't just isolate um like what we look for like silo content.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So
That is.
I I didn't want to like bash on
No,
any
we know
brands.
this. We know this is the case. We know that the majority of supplements in general that people get are just, if they say they're whole 100% organic, they're probably 25 to 30%.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, yeah, it's that's the truth. Yeah.
we
Again,
know,
it comes down to educating
yeah.
yourself, educating yourself, educating yourself, and not just trusting everything you hear, doing your homework and educating yourself.
Because all our medicine, we test all our medicine, we test our psychedelic medicine, we test our functional medicine. So it's all tested. So people can look anytime. And,
Yeah, well,
I think that really important.
That's what sets you apart, right? I mean, that you're doing your part to take the extra step to make sure that your customers don't have to worry about anything. You do all the worrying for them,
Yep.
right? And that's why they trust you. And I think that's what brands need to do a lot more, because anything goes at this point. You get, people think chaga is chaga, right?
Yeah.
And if it, I mean, unfortunately, is an orange, it's, depending
Yeah.
on what farmer's market you go to, or what produce store you go to, or what farm you go to, yeah, sure. But if you care about this medicine and you're trying to achieve some particular goal, these are things that really matter. And I think you guys are doing a good part on that, and doing the individual things that you need to do to set yourself apart from all these other brands that are just sourcing from Amazon. And
Mhm.
and not to say that every brand on Amazon, there are good brands on there, and you'll notice
Of course.
in the price difference.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, the price difference.
Yeah.
You'll
So,
notice the
you know what,
price
Adrian,
difference.
I could talk to you all
Yeah,
day,
this
every
has
day,
been a
but after
wonderful
about an hour, people
conversation.
get really bored. So let's go over the really big strains. Let's go over Golden Teacher. It's the one, it's the really
It's the
one.
OG.
It's the OG. And then we got Bluey Vuitton. You wanna have a good time, that's the good one. If you want to get introspective and really go beat yourself up, Mechilogorilla. And then Albino Penis Envy. Right? It's gonna be that other kind of like introspective, kind of the everything.
But
Uplifting.
here's the thing that I have found at the end of the day, no matter what medicine is that you are taking, if you know what medicine you're taking or how much you take, that medicine is going to give you what that medicine is going to give you in that experience. Period. End of the story.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So people think that they can control this experience. They are wrong. And it's about,
Very
again,
wrong.
it goes back to the resonance that you may or may not think you are on. This medicine is the resonance that will recalibrate you, whether you think is right or wrong, or scary or not.
Yep.
It will.
I love that word, because I think that's what psychedelics do. Every time you take them, they're recalibrating you, no matter what it is. Powerful, middle, microdosing, even microdosing. You're being recalibrated every day.
Yep.
And you have to. This is one important thing with microdosing. That's probably the most important thing. You have to give yourself a tolerance break, at least 2 days of a tolerance break, because it's going to be ineffective after a while. It's just overloading itself. Doesn't know what to do.
Your body, you need time, just like when you work out. Do you work
Yeah.
out every single day and let your muscles be sore? No, you have to let them regenerate, do its thing, and then go back at it, right? And
Yeah.
so people just need these education. Again, I think you guys are doing a great job of doing that, because they need a modern shaman, in all of this, right? Like, they need to be
Yep.
able to communicate what's really going on, and I think that's what you guys focus on, and I think that's why you're
But
doing a
here's
great
what I
job.
tell everybody. Here's what we tell everybody at Mama Dose and the Plant Medicine Path and Medicine with the Metals, and Mark and I just tell this all the time, is you are your own guru, right? You are. And you already have all the answers inside of you. These medicines light those up and allow you to see them if you're willing to look. If you're willing to look.
You gotta be open.
You gotta be open.
Yeah.
And the real magic is that lion's mane and a little bit of psilocybin. That's a great combination.
Well, cordyceps and a little bit of salo as well.
Yeah, they're all great combinations.
Yeah.
I hope you'll come back and talk with us again, because
good shot
this
again.
is such a great conversation, and Mark and I could talk about fungi all day long.
I like how you said we're gonna use that catch line there. We said it.
What was it?
I don't know.
Fungi. What did you say?
What can fungi do for you?
What can fungi do for you? Thank you so much.
It's a great conversation.
Definitely.
Today. Love your smile, brother.
Yeah.
I thought you'd use psilocybin with a smile like that.
You take care. Thank you for having me.
How much?
So,
Alrighty. Bye.
Yeah, that was great. You have got some great information.